And I now give the floor to the representative of Russian Federation.
Спасибо.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'd like to thank you for taking the initiative before our meeting to hold a moment's silence in memory of the victims of the earthquake in Haiti and the recent terrorist attack in Niger. We mourn alongside our colleagues. We express our condolences to our friends from Niger. We welcome the personal participation in the meeting of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Colombia, Claudia Blum. I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate you on your appointment and express the hope that the subject of Colombia will be discussed in the Security Council exclusively in a positive frame of mind. We also thank the Special Representative of the Secretary-General, Carlos Ruiz Massieu, for presenting the report. Judging by this document, the Security Council and the Secretary-General agree that success in the peace process entirely depends on the ability of Colombians to comprehensively and conscientiously implement their obligations under the historic final peace agreement. Colombia has entered into a very delicate stage, which will determine the resilience of the peace that Colombians achieved at such a high price. As the Secretary-General quite rightly notes in his report, the final peace agreement brings with it a lengthy period of post-conflict recovery. However, the firm foundations of peace need to be laid right now. For that reason, the UN Security Council, which is entrusted with verifying the Colombian settlement, is closely monitoring the development of events and expects that success that was achieved by the signing of the final peace agreement will not just be maintained but also built upon. Mr. President, the role of the UN verification mission is extremely important. However, primary responsibility for the peace process undoubtedly lies with the Colombians themselves. And as we can see from the report, in spite of some progress, a large part of the work to consolidate that peace still lies ahead. Since the final peace agreement was signed, it has become clear that in addition to the emergence of new challenges in the Colombian peace process, there's also the fundamental problems that urgently need to be resolved. Although the October elections were more peaceful than previous ones, the Secretary-General notes a rise of mistrust in various different stratas of society. And there are several different reasons for that situation. One of the main ones is the continuing security questions that have not been resolved. 2019 saw the highest number of victims since the final peace agreement was signed. Our view is that every murder must be investigated and that those responsible must be properly punished. The report also notes gaps in the area of political reintegration. In particular, one of the seats in Parliament still is temporarily blocked, a seat which, under the final agreement, was supposed to go to the People's Alternative Revolutionary Force, the FARC party, and not to a specific representative. There is demand within society for increasing the effectiveness of socio-economic reintegration as well. The report notes that there is broad dissatisfaction in society over the insufficient progress in the implementation of agrarian reforms, including reintegration programs and crop substitution programs. As for legal reintegration, here it is notable that over the reporting period, state programs did not accredit a single new participant, even though they did receive applications to that effect. The Security Council regularly insists on the need to preserve the independence of the Special Jurisdiction for Peace. And here, we cannot but be concerned by information in the report stating that lawyers representing former combatants in court have been receiving threats. Whoever those threats may come from, we see this as an attempt to try to put pressure on the justice system, and that practice must immediately end. The well-known cases need to be investigated, and those responsible must be brought to justice. We would also like to touch upon information in the report stating that communities and civil society organizations affected by the actions of the National Liberation Army, the ELN, are insisting on the need for dialogue with that group. We agree with the view that a genuinely lasting peace in Colombia is hard to imagine without taking into account the full spectrum of opinions, and we trust that Bogota will find a way to resolve disagreements with Cuba over these ELN negotiators that are there. We share the position of Havana that they cannot be extradited because in Colombia they will not be ensured, their inviolability will not be ensured, as is demanded by the guarantee protocols that were signed by the parties that govern the actions of participants in case of the dialogue breaking down. As many have done, we have noted in the report with concern the wave of protests in the country. We are convinced that calming society and preventing a further return to arms can only be done through the effective implementation of the final peace agreement. This document and its central element, the special jurisdiction for peace, made it possible for the Secretary General and the Security Council to support the peace process. Our consistent view is that stabilizing the situation can only be achieved exclusively through peaceful means with the largest possible public dialogue. And that approach is enshrined in the core Security Council resolution on peace building, Resolution 2282. That resolution stipulates that national responsibility for sustaining peace presupposes the government taking into account the views of every segment of society. In this respect, we hope that the initiatives announced by the President and society to establish a broad national dialogue will bear fruit. The most important thing is to prevent a duplication of efforts. We welcome the declared commitment by the Colombian leadership to the peace process, but we should not rest on our laurels. The international community, the UN and its Security Council, and most importantly, the Colombians themselves, expect the strict implementation of obligations under the final peace agreement. Without that, the consequences of 50 years of internal armed conflict cannot be overcome. We trust that the UN verification mission in Colombia will continue to play a significant role in the peace process. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Russian Federation for his statement.